Hello and welcome to a very unexpected live stream. I really didn't expect to be on air right now, but it is breaking news. The probable cause affidavit has just been released. Thank you very much to Stephanie for alerting me to that. I've tried to sort of come on as soon as I could, and so here I am. So without any further ado, let us get started. It's 7 pages long, and I'm coming into it completely sort of raw. I haven't actually even had a chance to read myself, so we're gonna go through it together and see what we can make of it. Let's just put up comments just so I can see what you guys are saying. Terry, good to see you. Mel, Stella, Kiki, Angela, Jody, good to see all of you. Okay, so let's get going. So, State of Indiana versus Richard M. Allen, probable cause affidavit. I, the undersigned affiant, submit the following information as a sworn affidavit, blah, 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 and then it starts. Basically, after a paragraph, it says, the facts and circumstances described below would be sufficient basis for a person of reasonable caution and prudence to believe that the accused has committed or attempted to commit the offences described, and that if arrested without a warrant, such would be authorized under a particular count, IC 35-33-1-1. And so this is really where it starts. It says that the hearsay statements of witnesses contained herein are considered reliable and credible due to the witnesses' personal knowledge and or are corroborated by the totality of the circumstances. Quite interesting that it's referring to hearsay statements that are considered reliable and credible. Who do you think that refers to? Who do you think those hearsay statements refer to? The other thing that I think is interesting before we go any further is it's a 7-page affidavit. It's not 1 page, it's not half a page, which suggests there is some flesh to this probable cause. Anyway, let's dig deeper into it. It says that on February 14th, 2017, victim 1 and victim 2, that is obviously Abby and Libby, were found deceased in the woods approximately 0.2 miles northeast of the Monon High Bridge in Carroll County. Their bodies were located on the north side of the Deer Creek. Quite interesting how that is made explicit right from the word go, which side of the river. At the time, the Monon High Bridge Trail was an approximately 1-mile gravel trail terminating at the Monon High Bridge. The Monon High Bridge is an abandoned railroad trestle, approximately 0.25 miles long, spanning the Deer Creek and Deer Creek Valley on the southeast end of the trail. Again, it's quite interesting that at this point in the affidavit, all it is doing is orientating us. It is telling us about the geography, right? It's quite interesting. So obviously, if you don't know the geography, then you are going to struggle with this affidavit. And so it just shows you that was a logical place to start. Anyway, let's continue. Approximately 0.7 miles northwest on the trail from the northwestern edge of the Monon High Bridge is the Freedom Bridge, which is a pedestrian bridge spanning State Road 25. Approximately 250 feet west of Freedom Bridge was a former railroad overpass over Old State Road 25, also known as County Road 300 North. The trail terminates just west of the former railroad overpass. The majority of the trail is in a wooded area with a steep embankment. Now we're actually already on page 2. On the south side of the trail, the entirety of the trail and the location of the girls' bodies were and are located in Carroll County, Indiana. So this is really the section dealing with beyond the geography. Through interviews, reviews of electronic records, and review of video at the Hosier Harvest Store, investigators believe victim 1 and victim 2 were dropped off across from the Mears farm at 1:49 p.m. on February 13th, 2017 by, and that's redacted, obviously that is by Libby's sister. The Mears farm is located on the north side of County Road 300 North, near an entrance to the trails. So thus far, we're not really learning anything new, are we? The Mears, a video from victim two's phone shows that at 2:13 p.m., victim one and victim two encountered a male subject on the southeastern portion of the Manon High Bridge. So the side on Richard Allen's side of the bridge, right? The male ordered the guys down the hill. No witnesses saw them after this time. No outgoing communications were found on victim two's phone after this time. Their bodies were discovered on February 14th, 2017. Still, nothing in the affidavit that we don't really know already. The video recovered from victim two's phone shows victim one walking southeast on the Manon High Bridge while a male subject wearing a dark jacket and jeans walks behind her. As the male subject approaches victim one and two, one of the victims mentions gun. Wow. So that is something we don't know. We didn't know. That is something we speculated, that a gun could have been used to control them. And so, yeah, we have confirmation of that. As the male subject approaches victim one and two, one of the victim mentions gun. Wow. So that gives us confirmation, but also clarification on how he was able to control them kind of immediately. Near the end of the video, a male is seen and heard telling the guys down the hill. The girls then begin to proceed down the hill and the video ends. A still photograph taken from the video and the guys down the hill audio was subsequently released to the public to assist investigators in identifying the male. Victim one and two's deaths were ruled as homicides. Clothes were found, so this is also something we didn't know. Clothes were found in the Deer Creek, in the river, in the water, belonging to victim one and two, south of where their bodies were located. So that's something we didn't know. So I suppose what that suggests is there was perhaps blood on that clothing, and the clothing was removed to get rid of that, right? And perhaps other evidence as well. There was also a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from victim two's body, between victim one and victim two's bodies. The round was unspent and had extraction marks on it. That's interesting. So I think already the question comes up, how were the victims executed? What do you think? Is it through gunshot or something else? So we know that there was an unused round that was lying there. Interviews were conducted with 3 juveniles, and those are redacted. Someone redacted. They advised they were on the Manon High Bridge Trail on February 13th, 2017. So this is why I guess it was quite sensitive, is you had other juveniles who were there, who were witnesses, and as a result, it's somewhat sensitive. They advised they were walking on the trail toward Freedom Bridge to go home when they encountered a male walking from Freedom Bridge toward the Manon High Bridge. Then it says redacted described the male as kind of creepy, and advised he was wearing blue jeans, light blue jeans, and like a really light blue jacket. And his hair was gray, maybe a little brown, and he did not really show his face. She advised the jacket was a duck canvas type jacket. Redacted advised that she said hi to the male, but he just glared at them. So this is actually something else that we knew about, that there was, I think, a 16-year-old that said he saw Bridge Guy, that she greeted him and he was kind of unfriendly. That's actually also incredible, is that it looks like Bridge Guy was recorded on video and he was seen, and he committed the crime regardless. And then he also continued, apparently, living in plain sight. Pretty crazy, isn't it? She recalled him being in all black and had something covering his mouth. She described him as not very tall with a bigger build. I wonder what that means, something covering his mouth. Could it be a scarf? She described him as not very tall with a bigger build. She said he was not bigger than 5'10". I think it should be taller. Redacted advised he was wearing a black hoodie, black jeans, and black boots. So is that a second person? Because we know he didn't have black jeans, or did he change clothing? So is that is there an error in terms of the description here, or is the clothing this color because it's gotten wet, or is it somebody else completely? Is it an error? Is it because the clothing has been colored by blood or water or both? Or is it somebody else that they're describing? He stated he had his hand in his pockets. Redacted showed investigators photographs she took on her phone while she was on the trail that day. That's really incredible, is that there were additional photographs taken besides those of Bridge Guy. Now we're on page 3. The photographs included a photo of the Manon High Bridge taken at 12:43 p.m. and another one taken at 1:26 p.m. of the bench east of the Freedom Bridge. Redacted advised after she took the photo of the bench, they started walking back toward Freedom Bridge. You kind of get the idea that the reason why law enforcement didn't want to release this is because these are key witnesses, and could these key witnesses be intimidated? Could they change their mind about possibly testifying? Could someone related to Richard Allen possibly reach them or interfere in some way? Is that the thinking that was sort of taking place? Okay, let's continue. She advised that that was when they encountered the man who matched the description of the photograph taken from victim 2's video. Redacted described the man she encountered on the trail as wearing a blue or black windbreaker jacket. She advised the jacket had a collar and that he had his hood up from the clothing underneath his jacket. She advised he was wearing baggy jeans and was taller than her. She advised her head came up to approximately his shoulder. She advised that she said hi to the man and he said nothing back. He said that he was walking with a purpose, like he knew where he was going. Quite interesting. That she thought that he was a man on a mission. It wasn't just strolling around. It wasn't just someone hiking for the sort of fun of it. She stated he had his hands in his pockets and kept his head down. She advised she did not get a good look at his face, but believed him to be a white male. The girls advised after encountering the male, they continued their walk across Freedom Bridge and the old railroad bridge over Old State Road 25. Now, if we just stop at that point, you think about where we are already. You know, it's like, didn't we imagine that if anyone came forward, it would be someone coming forward in terms of social media? And yet this is someone coming forward who's actually there that day. Isn't that incredible? Okay. So now we're at the middle of page 3. So approaching halfway. Investigators spoke with Redacted, who advised she was on the trails on February 13th, 2017. Video from the Hoosier Harvester captured Redacted vehicle traveling eastbound at 1:46 p.m. toward the entrance across from the Mears farm. Now, whose vehicle do you think that is? Now, the part that's redacted there looks to me as though it's too short to be Alan's vehicle. But it could be. I guess it could be Alan's vehicle. Video from Hoosier harvest or captured redacted vehicle traveling eastbound. So Stephanie, I don't know if you are following on your PDF. Do you think you could fit the word Alan's vehicle into that small space where it's redacted? What was Abby's sister's name? Kelsey, right? So Alan is Allen and Kelsey is Kelsi. So whose vehicle was that? Captured someone's vehicle. I mean, it's either Kelsey's vehicle or Alan's vehicle, right? I suppose it could be an abbreviation. I suppose it could be RA's vehicle. I suppose that's possible. Anyway, there's a little bit of uncertainty there. Whose vehicle did they see traveling eastbound at 1:46 p.m. towards the entrance across from the Mears farm? Redacted advised she saw 4 juvenile females walking on the bridge over Old State Road 25 as she was driving underneath on her way to park. Redacted advised there was no other cars parked across from the Mears farm where she parked. Now, this is kind of addressing this idea of, did Bridge Guy arrive certainly on the north side by vehicle? And so far it appears to be that he didn't. So far, we'll see if anything else comes up. She advised that she walked to the Manon High Bridge and observed a male watching the one from victim 2's video. Sorry, matching the one. I think I need to just raise the size of the text because I don't have my glasses on. Okay, that should work. So what I'm seeing in front of me here is italicized and it's bold, so it's sort of big letters that are sort of skew, so it's a little bit difficult to make out. Okay, she advised approximately halfway between the bridge and the parking area across from Mears Farm, she passed 2 girls walking toward Manon High Bridge. She advised she believed the girls were victim 1 and victim 2. Video from the Hoosier Harvester shows that 1:49, a white car matching redacted. The redactions here aren't sort of black redactions, they're just white. So sometimes you can't even really tell very easily if it is redacted. Anyway, let's continue. Matching redacted vehicle traveling away from the entrance across from the Mears farm. I think that has to be Libby's sister, a vehicle dropping them off and then driving away. Redacted advised she finished her walk and saw no other adults other than the male on the bridge. Her vehicle is seen on Hoosier Harvester video at 2:14 p.m. leaving westbound from the trail. So it's quite interesting. There's a CCTV footage from this harvest store that is confirming the movements of vehicles, right? But apparently not Bridge Guys, not Richard Allen's, right? Redacted advised when she was leaving, she noted a vehicle was parked in an odd manner at the when she was leaving, she noted a vehicle was parked in an odd manner at the old Child Protective Services building. It said it was not odd for vehicles to be parked there, but she noticed it was odd because of the manner it was parked, backed in near the building. Now, could this be Keegan Klein waiting in a vehicle? Investigators received a tip from Redacted in which he stated he was on his way to Delphi on State Road 25 around 2:10 p.m. on February 13, 2017. He observed a purple PT Cruiser or small SUV type vehicle parked on the south side of the old CPS building. He stated it appeared as though it was backed in to conceal the license plate of the vehicle. This is interesting. So there does appear to be a vehicle in the story. Redacted both drew diagrams of where they saw the vehicle parked, and their diagrams generally matched as to the area the vehicle was parked and the manner in which it was parked. Redacted advised he remembered seeing a smaller dark-colored car parked at the old CPS building. He described it as possibly being a smart car. Redacted vehicle is seen leaving at 2:28 p.m. on the Hoosier Harvestal video. Investigators spoke with Redacted, who stated that she was traveling east on 300 North on February 13th and observed a male subject walking west on the north side of 300 North away from the Manon High Bridge. Redacted advised that the male subject was wearing a blue-colored jacket and blue jeans and was muddy and bloody. Wow, that's interesting. So someone saw a male subject apparently after the crime was committed. His blue jeans were muddy and bloody. He further stated that it appeared he had gotten into a fight. Investigators were able to determine from watching the video from the Hoosier Harvestal that Redacted was traveling on CR 300 North at approximately 3:57 p.m. It's actually incredible how much footage is available on that particular CCTV camera, isn't it? It's pretty amazing. It's kind of breakthrough evidence along with witnesses that were there. Through interviews, electronic data, photographs, and video from the Hoosier Harvestal, investigators determined that there were other people on the trail that day after 2:13 p.m. Those people were interviewed, and none of those individuals encountered the male subject referenced above, witnessed by the juvenile girls, Redacted and Redacted. Further, none of those individuals witnessed victim 1 and victim 2. Investigators reviewing prior tips encountered a tip narrative from an officer who interviewed Richard M. Allen in 2017. This is interesting. That narrative stated, Mr. Allen was on the trail between 13:30 and 15:30, so for those 2 hours. He parked at the old Farm Bureau building and walked to the new Freedom Bridge, so a car is part of the story. While at the Freedom Bridge, he saw 3 females. He noted one was taller and had brown or black hair. He did not remember description, nor did he speak with them. It's a little bit grammatically odd there. He did not remember description. Seems to be he couldn't remember what he saw in order to describe them, nor did he speak with them. He walked from the Freedom Bridge to the High Bridge. He did not see anybody, although he stated he was watching a stock ticker on his phone as he walked. He stated there were vehicles parked at the High Bridge trailhead. However, he did not pay attention to them. He did not take any photos or video. His cell phone did not list an IMEI, but did have the following. And then it refers to a lot of numbers: MEID 256 691 463 100 153 495, MEID HEX 990024 702 5797. Really not sure what that is about. I'd have to do some research. What is IMI? What is IMEI? See if we can quickly bring that up. IMEI. International Mobile Equipment Identity. Quite interesting. Now, the phone identifier. Okay. Okay, so let's continue. So we are now going on to page 5. And I must say there's not really a terrible amount of information here, is there, so far? Potential follow-up information. Who were the 3 girls walking in the area of Freedom Bridge? Investigators believe Mr. Allen was referring to the former Child Protective Services building, as there was not a Farm Bureau building in the area, nor had there been. Investigators believe the females he saw included redacted and redacted due to the time they were leaving the trail, the time he reported getting to the trail, and the descriptions the 3 females gave. So it actually seems like he lied, that he said he was near the Farm Bureau building, but there wasn't one. And you would imagine him saying that and it wasn't true, you'd think that they would follow up on that. Investigators discovered Richard Allen owned 2 vehicles in 2017, a 2016 black Ford Focus and a 2006 gray Ford 500. Investigators observed a vehicle that resembled Allen's 2016 Ford Focus on the Hoosier Harvest Store video at 1:27 p.m. traveling westbound on CR 300 North in front of the Hoosier Harvest Store, which coincided with his statement that he arrived around 1:30 p.m. at the trails. So do you notice that it's kind of this idea that he arrives at 1:30 p.m. It's quite a round number in terms of time. And the girls kind of arrive after him, but theoretically to meet at 2 p.m. You also get the idea that he's arriving there at 1:30 to scout the area, but also to meet at 2 p.m. Don't you get that idea? Okay. Investigators note witnesses describe the vehicle parked at the former Child Protective Services building as a PT Cruiser, small SUV or smart car. Investigators believe those descriptions are similar in nature to a 2016 Ford Focus. Quite interesting. So an inaccurate description is now being translated in a way to mean something else, right? On October 13th, 2022, so recently, Richard Allen was interviewed again by investigators. This part should be interesting. He advised he was on the trails on February 13th, 2017. He stated he saw juvenile girls on the trails east of Freedom Bridge and that he went onto the Manon High Bridge. Richard Allen further stated he went out onto the Manon High Bridge to watch the fish. That's quite an interesting analogy, even if it's just sort of criminal psychology. What do you do with fish? Well, you try and lure them, you try and hook a fish, you try and catch a fish, you try and use bait to catch a fish. So if Richard Allen is the perpetrator here, think about the mindset that he's potentially, in his mind, comparing these young girls to fish that he's trying to catch, that he's trying to lure, that he's trying to bait, right? Later in his statement, he said he walked out to the first platform on the bridge. He stated he then walked back, sat on a bench on the trail, and then left. Do you think that's true? He stated he parked his car on the side of an old building. He told investigators he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. That's spelled Carhartt jacket. He advised he may have been wearing some type of head covering as well. He further claimed he saw no one else except for the juvenile girls he saw east of the Freedom Bridge. He told investigators that he owns firearms and they are at his home. Richard M. Allen's wife, Kathy Allen, also spoke to investigators. He confirmed that Richard did have guns and knives at the residence. He also stated that Richard still owns, wow, that's pretty incredible. Richard still owns a blue Carhartt jacket. Kathy, didn't you know that? Kathy, didn't you see that jacket over and over? And didn't you see it in his closet? So I wonder whether they took that into evidence. On October 13th, 2022, investigators executed a search warrant of Richard Allen's residence at 1967 North Whiteman Drive, Delphi, Carroll County, Indiana. Wow. Among other items, officers located jackets, boots, knives, and firearms, including a Sig-Sauer model P226.40 caliber pistol with serial number U625627. Now, do you remember they found a round between the two girls? Let's just go back to that. What size was that round? Wasn't it a 40? Um, so I just want to quickly confirm. So one of the victims mentions gun. Yes. So yeah, it says there was a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from the victim's body. One wonders, how did that round get out of the weapon? And was the gun actually used? When asked about the unspent bullet, he did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found between the bodies of victims. Were you guys able to see me? I was a little bit worried that this was going to happen. And now I seem to have lost the images of this one. Not that one. Is it this one? Can you guys see me? I can't see myself on the camera. Oh, so that's off. Can you guys see me? I've tried to enter through a different manner. Can you guys see me? Hello? Can you guys see me? Hello? Okay. So I don't know how long I'm going to be able to be on. It just depends on how long the laptop provides illumination. So let's see how much we can get through. So it's actually incredible that Richard Allen didn't get rid of the 6 hour. It's incredible that he didn't get rid of his coat. I suppose maybe he thought if he gets rid of it, then will that be suspicious? But then keeping it isn't that evidence, right? When asked about the unspent bullet, he did not have an explanation of why the bullet was found between the bodies of victim 1 and 2. He again admitted that he was on the trail, but denied knowing victim 1 or victim 2. It's quite weird. It's at this point, is there DNA that was left behind? Well, an unspent bullet. So was a gun actually used in the execution of the crime? It seems like it wasn't. So an unspent round was found there, but what was the actual cause of death? Well, it doesn't seem to be a gunshot wound. And why not? Because of the threat of someone hearing something, right? So we're on page 6. We're almost through the probable cause. He admitted he was on the trail, but he denied knowing victim 1 and 2 and denied any involvement in their murders. Now, is there going to be something digital linking him? Carroll County Sheriff's Department Detective Redacted has been part of the investigation since it started in 2017. He has had an opportunity to review and examine evidence gathered in this investigation. Detective Redacted, along with other investigators, believe the evidence gathered shows that Richard Allen is the male subject seen on the video from victim 2's phone who forced the victims down the hill. Further, that the victims were forced down the hill by Richard Allen and led to the location where they were murdered. Through the statements and photographs of the juvenile females and the statement of Redacted, and something were at the southeast edge of the trail at 12:43 east of the Freedom Bridge at 1:26 p.m. and walked across the former railroad overpass over Old State Road 25 after 1:26 p.m. and after 1:46 p.m. They walked the entirety of the trail and observed only one person, an adult male. Redacted vehicle is seen on Hoosier Harvester video at 1:46 p.m. and leaving at 2:14 p.m. And she stated she only saw one adult male. Redacted described the male in similar manners, wearing similar clothing, leading investigators to believe all four saw the same male individual. Now, I don't know about you, I'm finding this probable cause affidavit to be very underwhelming. There's no mention thus far of DNA evidence. There's no mention thus far of the type of injuries that the girl suffered. What has come up has been a gun and a bullet, and that he's kept his clothing, that the jacket that he wore, he kept. Just quickly run through those evidence items that they seized. So it says here, investigators then ran the firearm and found that the firearm was purchased by Richard Allen in 2001. Richard Allen voluntarily came. Okay, so we know that. I just want to deal with the part where they say what they retrieved from him. The clothing he told investigators he was wearing matched the clothing of the male in victim 2's video. Among other items, officers located jackets, boots, knives, and firearms, right? The knives there, I think, is really important. I think the knives may be what caused that huge shedding of blood, right? So I don't think it was caused by a firearm. I think it was caused by a knife. So jackets, boots, so boots as well, probably the boots he was wearing that day. Knives, plural, firearms, including the Sig Sauer. Okay. And so they did ballistic tests and then seemed to sort of do a match, find a match with it. Okay, so let's go to the last page here. Investigators believe Richard Allen was the male seen by Okay. The clothing he told investigators he was wearing matched the clothing. A vehicle matching the description of his 2016 Ford Focus is seen at or around 20:10 p.m., 22:14 p.m., and 2:28 p.m. at the former CPS building. Through his own admissions, Richard Allen walked the trails and eventually hiked to the Menon High Bridge and walked out onto the Menon High Bridge. A male subject matching Richard Allen's description was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. Investigators identified other individuals on the trails or CR 300 north between 2:30 p.m. and 4:11 p.m. None of those individuals saw a male subject matching the description of Richard Allen on the trail. Furthermore, Richard Allen stated that he only saw 3 girls on the trail who investigators believed to be redacted. Investigators believe Richard Allen was not seen on the trail after 2:13 p.m. because he was in the woods with victim 1 and victim 2. So I think to kind of make sense of this, you kind of need to go through the probable cause affidavit almost with a monopoly board. And basically, because everyone's redacted, you kind of need to call someone Susie and someone else Janet and someone else Lisa, right? And move the characters that are in the story around. Otherwise, it's really difficult to make sense of it. But the other thing is just to move. The most important person to move around is Richard Allen, right? Okay. So this is the last paragraph on page 7. Investigators believe Richard Allen was not seen on the trail after 2:13 because he was in the woods with victim 1 and victim 2. That makes sense. An unspent .40 caliber round between the bodies of victim 1 and 2 was forensically determined to have been cycled through Richard Allen's 6 Sauer model P226. Now, if you take that and you apply that to the Caitlin Armstrong case, you know what her defense lawyer said? He said that the ballistics is like pseudoscience. He even likened it to, he almost said it's like witchcraft, right? I wouldn't go that far, but that is a possible defense, as you can say it's not absolutely 100% ballistic evidence. One thing I'm surprised that we're not seeing here is digital things. I'm really surprised not to see that. Anyway, let's go on. The 6R model P226 was found at Richard Allen's residence and he admitted to owning it. Investigators were able to determine that he had owned it since 2001. Richard Allen stated he had not been on that property where the unspent round was found, that he did not know the property owner, and he had no explanation as to why a round cycled through his firearm would be at that location. So I suppose he could have said, you know what, for a while my gun went missing. My brother sometimes uses it or whatever. But he had no explanation. The final paragraph here, furthermore, he said that he had never allowed anyone to use or borrow the 6R model P226. Investigators believe that after the victims were murdered, Richard Allen returned to his vehicle by walking down the CR 300 north. Investigators believe he was seen by, that's incredible, is that after he committed this crime, and even though he was covered in blood, he was actually seen by people walking back to his vehicle, and then it still took almost 6 years to catch him. On CR 300 north with clothes that were muddy and bloody, right? So he did go into the creek, as we speculated, probably to wash, probably to dispose of evidence as well. Redacted, along with investigators, believe the statements made by the witnesses because the statements corroborate. Let me read that again. Redacted, along with investigators, believe the statements made by the witnesses because the statements corroborate the timeline of the death, the two victims, as well as coincide with the admissions made by Richard Allen. Further, the accounts relayed by redacted and redacted are similar in nature, and timestamps on photographs taken by redacted correspond to the times the juvenile females said they were on the trail and saw the male individual. Now, I must say there's nothing in here about Keegan Klein, nothing in here about Anthony Shots. I think one's got to say, is there probable cause? And I think the fact that, number one, Richard Allen places himself there, number two, that his clothing matches what is seen in the video taken by Libby, and that clothing has actually been found in his home, right? And then to some extent, the CCTV footage was to me a little bit iffy. Some people say that they thought they saw a smart car. Other people say, well, now it looks like it was a Ford Focus. Well, if they'd known that all along, if they'd just known the vehicle, that should have allowed them to catch Richard Allen kind of immediately. If they had his vehicle, all you need to do is look for that vehicle in Delphi. So why was there such a problem? Jane Belinda says, it does make a good amount of sense. Thank you for reading. If you were seen walking back, there's a possibility of the timeline, how long he spent with the victims. I don't know, to me, the biggest mystery here is that it took so long. I mean, what was so difficult about it? One does wonder, is there something missing from the probable cause affidavit? Also, is Keegan Klein a kind of missing link where something was determined between them and that is just off the record? Keegan Klein gets a kind of immunity, nothing is mentioned there. Is that something that is just like entirely off the books? It's actually incredible how much they know here, and how did they miss Richard Allen? And I think how they found Richard Allen subsequently was the sheriff's department gave this case to new detectives and said, "Can you just review the evidence?" And they found, well, you did actually speak to someone who was there, who said he was there, Richard Allen. So is that really how they managed to solve this case? Through reviewing his own admission? Is it as simple and as crazy as that? Okay, so I'm going to try and read a couple of your comments. I'm reading it on my phone, so I kind of need to sort of squint in. Sorry about the messiness of this this live, but number one, I didn't know it was going to happen, and number two, because I traveled to a new area today, I'm totally unfamiliar with the load shedding, and I did kind of fear that it was going to happen, which is why when Stephanie told me, my response was basically an expletive. I do think it's interesting that his story to law enforcement was that he was there on the bridge to look at fish. I think that kind of reveals more than maybe meant to reveal. Thanks a lot, Terry. Thanks a lot. Yeah, load shedding in South Africa. Okay, so yeah, that is basically it. So what is really incredible is how many people were actually on the scene there. Seems like at least 2 or 3 young people saw Richard Allen, and Richard Allen committed the crime regardless, based on this narrative. incredible, isn't it? Incredible that someone actually seemed to see him, or someone who seemed to be him, muddy and bloody. I mean, that is also pretty incredible. The other thing, if I understand this correctly, Stephanie, do I understand this correctly, that he did park on the north side? Is that right? He did park on the north side. So he did actually shepherd them all that way from the bridge to the far side near Logan's property with a gun. He did successfully shepherd them all that way. And so I guess the only thing he had in his pockets was a gun and maybe a knife as well. Okay, let's go through some of your comments. Stephanie says yes. Holly says, appreciate you taking the time. It's a pleasure. There really wouldn't have been anything else to do, especially that the light's gone out. Terry says, muddy is almost as important as bloody. Yeah, that is also a good point. It's also a good point. But it does make you wonder, what did they find at his house? Like when they dug in the ground, did they find anything? Apparently not. Apparently they didn't find any jewelry. Apparently they didn't find any souvenir. Apparently they didn't find any clothing belonging to the girls, as far as we know. The main thing that is connecting Richard Allen, I guess I should say allegedly, is a bullet, an unfired bullet. And of course, eyewitnesses, and then also the fact that I think the fact that one of the girls says gun is a kind of almost by the way comment that is possibly going to be the difference between someone getting off with something and not getting off, is the fact that we know there was a gun there because they said so. And now the round matches Richard Allen's. Snowflake Forest, yeah, the fact that he admitted being there is also huge. Also that he can't explain how that bullet could have gotten there, that's a big problem. Why don't you have an explanation for that? He didn't even try. Forensic Mystic says, I can't wait till we know more about how Richard got away so long. Calgo says, it fills in some blanks. Yeah, it does. Forensic Mystic says, did he lure them there? Well, we think so, but there's no evidence of that in this probable cause affidavit. There's nothing. But I mean, if they were communicating with someone, then didn't they go there to meet someone? And didn't he know that? Now, I suppose you could argue that he was just looking for some victims, right? He was on the prowl. But I personally don't believe that. I believe that it was kind of orchestrated. Yeah, Bridge Guy was in blue. So there are things missing from this probable cause affidavit, things that there's quite a lot in here that we already knew, I would say 70, 80%. And then there's a certain amount that we didn't know, but also suspected, like that a gun was involved. And the direction in which he arrived. One thing I got wrong was that I thought he may have parked on the south side. But, criminals aren't necessarily very bright. And so the fact that he did what he did, he was actually seen and his vehicle was seen on CCTV. So, the best way to commit a crime isn't necessarily the way that it is committed. But that is, I think, how you need to start sort of breaking it down, right? Mr. Hat says this is what they didn't want released. Yeah, it is quite strange. I suppose there's a possibility that some of these young witnesses may not want to come forward. They might feel their privacy is in jeopardy, but who knows? Stephanie says, I can see why the defense didn't mind it coming out. Yeah. Half Rider says it's hard for witnesses, especially kids, to give um, an accurate description. Is there any other comments? Okay. I can't believe it. It feels like this live is a lot longer than an hour. I don't know. It just feels like it's almost twice as long. John Hammer, so rare one goes to such extreme levels of horror to be. To me, what is incredible is that his wife. What did his wife say? We'll just go back to that. That his wife saw that jacket and didn't think anything of it. The other thing that's ironic is where he parked. He parked in front of the Child Protective Services building. I mean, talk about irony. I'm going to get to that section where it deals with his wife. I can't seem to find it. Richard Allen's wife also spoke to investigators. She confirmed that Richard did have guns and knives at the residence. She also stated that Richard still owns a blue Carhartt jacket. So she knew it. She knew about that jacket. She knew that he went. Didn't she know that he went to the bridge that day? Stephanie, I think you didn't you theorize that something was going on near that building? Wasn't that something that was coming up in certain photos? So, I mean, can you imagine if you're his wife and you keep seeing bridge guy, bridge guy, bridge guy, and then you can see that he's got a certain kind of jacket. Meanwhile, that jacket's hanging in his closet in your house. Shrug. So one wonders, did he arrive home and then do some laundry? Did he ask his wife to do some laundry? Like what happened when he got home? Because he's covered in mud and blood. Also, did they find any evidence in that Ford Focus? I don't know if they would find anything 5 years later, but it's possible. Cadaver dogs might alert to blood evidence even a long time later. You don't know. It's possible. Cowgirl says their washing machine suspiciously broke after the murders. Really? Okay. I didn't know that. I don't know if that's confirmed. Someone says the wife may have been out of town the day it happened. And if she wasn't, Pauline says, like Dennis Rader, writing articles and sending them to Ali. Yeah. Well, I must say, true crime this year has been quite a roller coaster ride. There have been some cases. I suppose you could argue that Summerwells was last year, but the fact that the Summerwells case has just not been resolved, I think the Delphi case gives us some hope that it might still be. There have been some cases that have resolved in ways that surprised some, like the Kylie Rodney case. There have been some cases that are still kind of unresolved, like the Alec Baldwin case. And then there is the Idaho case that is defying kind of reality. It's like, how is this possible? And I think what this shows is that law enforcement often look dumb because they're not allowed to reveal their hands. So law enforcement often seem to be dumb and ineffectual when they're simply not playing their cards, right? So that may be the case in the Idaho case as well, where they know certain things, but they can only act when they know enough, right? They probably know a lot more than we think they know. Bear in mind they've seen the inside of the crime scene, but they can only act on what they can prove. One thing that I've found disappointing with this probable cause affidavit is there's nothing about DNA. There's virtually nothing about the crime scene. I mean, there's nothing about staging or virtually any description about Abby or Libby, except that I think their clothes were found in the creek, which I guess suggests that they weren't wearing clothes, I suppose. The other thing is that a bullet was found between them, and it's unspent. How did that round end up there? What was their scuffle? What was that all about? Okay, so I think I'm going to just wrap up just by giving you guys a bit of context to where I am. I've actually the latest shorts that I've been putting up are set to members only, just because I kind of want to be a little bit private about this aspect of my journey, of my travel. So I don't want to be too public about exactly where I am or where I'm moving. So that's one reason why I've done that. I must tell you that where I arrived today, when I walked onto the beach, the sun was setting, and a pod of dolphins passed me on the beach. I was sort of the only person walking on the beach. Beautiful, the way the end of day light was touching the water, and the water just looked really beautiful. And then on my way back, those same dolphins came all the way back as well, some of them jumping right out the water. Unfortunately, my phone wasn't charged then. It was literally in my hand, but dead. I couldn't record any of that. There were probably 10, 20 dolphins sort of surfing on the waves and then turning away. But probably a school of, I don't know, 50 dolphins or 100 dolphins passing this way and passing that way. I must say it's one of the most magical things I've seen all year. Was this evening at dusk really was quite magical. I did put up one video in that area, and I did take one or two photos, but as I say, while I walked on the beach, my camera died, my phone died. So that's the situation. Melson says, I've been loving your daily vids. Thanks for sharing. Thanks a lot. Terry says we should let Nick know. What's that? Karen says, will you show us when you get back? Yeah, I might. Yeah, the unfortunate thing is, I bought a pedal ski, and I believe in the time between buying the pedal ski and now, someone was actually killed by a great white who was pedal skiing. So that definitely cuts quite close to home. Um, Definitely cuts quite close to home. Terry says not seeing anything in members only, but you should look now, Terry. I put it up a few hours ago. Yeah, okay, so this was a quick read through, and I just provided some sort of off the top of my head analysis, the psychology of the fish, and it obviously deserves a proper going through again. I do think the fact that knives are mentioned suggests that is actually how they were killed. Um, there's no mention. You notice there's no mention of sedatives. Um, so yeah, I do think that is quite interesting. Okay, let's go through our last few comments. Yeah, they've just been put up on members only. Susan says, I just walked into this late. I get noticed. Well, this is put up very uh, spur of the moment, which is why it's a little bit chaotic. Uh, Stephanie, can you guys do me a favor and just leave a comment under this video? Just say, although the video does, there's a glitch in the middle, it does continue. The analysis does continue. Karen says, thanks for your input. Always interesting to hear from you. Maybe more can be gleaned from what is not said. Well, don't you find it interesting that Keegan Klein isn't in the story whatsoever? Is that relevant? Is that irrelevant? So what do you guys think? Do you think this was a premeditated crime? Do you think Richard Allen was part of the Anthony Shots thing, or that he just happened to be there? What do you guys think? Do you think Anthony Shots is still relevant to this? Thanks a lot, Stephanie. Beverly says relevant. Mel Stiller says we haven't seen the medical examiner's report yet. That's where we'd find out. Yeah. What I'm quite kind of impressed with is how much we knew. I mean, the fact that we assumed that he had a gun turned out to be 100% right. Um, so, like that's an inference that turned out to be 100% right. Holly Golati says he meditated. Magical Mother says it would be a huge coincidence if he just happened to be there. Yeah. Mel Stiller says, is he a social media composite? Could be. Stephanie says, I'm not convinced on the KK connection any more than before this. I don't know, like the girls were there to meet someone. And I think that I think there is a link, but I don't know whether they can prove that link. So Jane Belinda says, I'm wondering, let's see if I can highlight this comment. Not quite, I don't think I can do it. I think I need to do that. There we go. So Jane says, what was the motive? Now, to me, it's quite obvious. The fact that there were witnesses, that there were other juveniles that saw him, I think was someone so caught up in fantasy, so caught up in what he wanted to do, what he knew he was going to do, what he was, so caught up in all of that, that I mean, all of these things were warnings. Someone looked at you, said hi. Someone actually recorded you on their phone. Actually, not only recorded you, but even your voice. Warning, 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 and he couldn't stop himself. Why? Because he was addicted. He was so caught up in his fantasies that all of those warnings he was ignoring. And one does wonder whether you have something like that in the Idaho case, where was the addiction something else? Was it a drug addiction? Was it a situation where someone was involuntary celibate and they were also caught up in fantasy, and that led to such high expectations and anticipation that they couldn't let go of that at the last moment. But you do kind of get the sense that in both cases there's a strong sexual element, right? Don't you? And what that does is it blinds the ability to think rationally and sensibly. I mean, look at Chris Watts. Basically, he was just having an electric affair, and that made him a crazy person. And you could, in a weird way, explain what happened here in the same way. It's obviously very reductionist, but it's basically what you're talking about. Stephanie says, very brazen to walk back to his vehicle covered in blood. Absolutely. Well, it's been a really long time since I've done a live on my phone. Definitely been a while. Helena says, one track mind. Yeah, so if you keep feeding that track, right? If you keep reinforcing that one track, then it's quite hard to get it off that track, right? Okay. So just to kind of remind you, well, now suddenly I've gone dark. Maybe I can do that. That better. Light, dark, light, dark. Okay. So just to remind us how we got here, today, Allen Superior Judge Fran Gull, she issued an order regarding the probable cause affidavit, and she just denied the state's request to keep the report sealed. And then voila, the report has come out. And so this is the result. I don't know about you, but I found it a little bit underwhelming. There certainly aren't any fireworks. There's not like absolutely direct evidence linking Richard Allen, but it is quite a strong case. To me, the big mystery is why did it take 5 years? That's really it. What does it say? The court records were the subject of a hearing to determine if the records would remain sealed. Carroll County Prosecutor Nick McClelland, who pressed for the records to remain sealed, said there was good reason to believe Allen is not the only one involved. So that's really why they wanted to keep it sealed. So one does wonder if Allen is not the only one involved, is the part dealing with someone else possibly being involved, is that kind of redacted, right? That's the reason why they wanted to keep it redacted, was they thought he's not the only one involved. So is the other person involved, A, Keegan Klein, and B, is that why they didn't want to sort of release it? I suppose another possibility is, did this other person who's involved help them out? Is that like totally redacted? I mean, is that page 8? There seems to be nothing on page 8. It seems to be incomplete, the probable cause. Thanks a lot. Yeah, I mean, the man in black. Thanks a lot for that, Stephanie. Yeah, I really was hoping to get through my holiday without doing any lives, because what you guys get when I come back is a refreshed neck and a enthusiastic and motivated creator. If I work while I'm on holiday, I sort of come back like this. I'd rather come back like this. You know what I mean? Um, but I thought this was really important to deal with. Okay, let's have a look. So it says here, Allen's attorneys welcomed the unsealing of the documents, commenting that they believed in their client's innocence. So it's quite interesting that the defense's play is that they are happy that the documents were unsealed, right? Okay. I think I'm going to just take a few more comments. Um, Thanks a lot, Pauline. Karen says no. Karen says no more work. I appreciate you. Enjoy your holiday. Thanks a lot for that. Yeah, can you see? I've actually kind of burnt. Look at I've kind of got a watch tan. Can you see that? So yeah, I'm trying to get fitter and get some exercise and get some sunshine and clear all the crime stuff out of my mind. I think it's healthy to do that every now and then, just like wash it all out, right? Uh, Tammy says they were supposed to meet Anthony Shots. Pat says, thanks a lot, Margaret. Thanks a lot for that. What did Pat say? Thank you for the show. If they'd released it sooner, I think it would have been solved years ago. Well, I mean, one thing that definitely comes out of this is that they could have found his vehicle, right? So, I mean, if they just sort of searched, like, so who was present at the site? Okay, Richard Allen. Well, let's search his property. Well, okay, so he has a gun matching the bullet that was there. It's actually incredible that he didn't get rid of the gun. It's incredible that he didn't get rid of the coat. It's incredible that he didn't get rid of the boots. What else didn't he get rid of? Um, the car. He didn't get rid of the car, but you just kind of think that just based on CCTV, they should have been able to track down his car. But then I guess you can say there are cars all over the place. It doesn't necessarily mean anything until you put the pieces together. That's why we say in true crime the details matter, right? The details do matter. BG113 says it's freezing in the UK. Well, I drove through a section today that was 43 degrees Celsius. When I stepped outside my vehicle, it was like literally stepping into an oven. It was incredibly hot, and it's not even, summer hasn't really even started yet. Summer really gets going in January. So I hate to know how hot it's going to be by then, by January. Let's just go to some, almost knocked this off the table. Yeah, we still don't know if a memento was taken, and if one was taken, what it was. We still don't know that. There's also no mention that was his daughter spoken to. There's also no mention of sedatives. Um, we thought sedatives because there are no defensive wounds, but that's kind of a mystery. Why are there no defensive wounds? So what is quite interesting, just going over to the Idaho case, is I'd have thought I kept seeing those 4 vehicles parked in front of the house, and I thought, well, aren't those the 4 vehicles belonging to the victims? Basically, the Range Rover being Kaylee's, the blue vehicle, I'm assuming, being Ethan's, the white Chevy, I'm assuming, being Maddie's, and sorry, not Maddie's, Zaina's. These are just assumptions. I don't know this for sure. And then the red Jeep being Madison's, right? And then after I put that up on Patreon, the cops literally went and searched the white Chevy like 15 days later. So that was definitely quite weird. Definitely quite weird. So I'm going to do a quick search on Delphi and just see what's making the headlines. And then we'll do a quick search of course, the Wi-Fi is off, so I actually can't do that. Thought criminal said, I thought the red Jeep is Ethan's. So I don't know. I don't know whose it is. But I did wonder whether the driver of, whether the blue sedan was the sedan that picked up the girls. Because apparently someone in it said, hey, hurry up. So that's something that I assumed. Court criminal says Maddie was the target, in my opinion. I actually think it was Kaylee. Trish says, what do you think about the neighbor in the Idaho case? Well, I've heard different things. Yeah, I've heard different things. I've heard that he said they often made a noise, and that yeah. Yeah, I suppose it could be Zaina's, but they did say that a dark sedan picked up the girls. The question I have is did all 4 of them arrive home at the same time? At that later time, it is now 1:56 a.m. did they all arrive at the same time? Or in other words, did Ethan and Zaina pick them up? What's actually the truth there? As far as I know, it was a private party who picked them up. So if Maddie and Kaylee arrived home at 1:56, then when did Ethan and Zaina arrive back? Is it till 1:45? Just a couple of questions. Pauline says the neighbor says he can't. I don't suspect the neighbor. Okay. Okay, so I think I'm gonna end it at an hour and a half. Susan says you are so dedicated, you'll never lose your people. Thanks a lot. Pat says they just started looking over old info, in my opinion. That's in terms of, well, which case are you talking about? In the Delphi case, they definitely did that. I suppose they could have done that in the Idaho case where they were like, well, what else can we look at? And then they looked into the vehicles, I suppose. Delphi. So Koi Cat says, hi all, guess I'm really late. You are really late. You're probably going to need to go back and watch the whole thing. There's a section where the power goes out, but give it about 10 minutes where the screen appears like this, and then it goes back to reading through it. So, okay, yeah. So, thanks everyone for being here. I know it was very short notice. Thanks, Stephanie, very much for keeping me in the loop and allowing me to kind of be on top of things, even though I'm not really supposed to be. um, I am obviously keeping an eye on the Idaho case. I am covering it, what is newsworthy on Patreon. And sort of going forward, I'll be putting up short members only, just because I don't want to be too um, I don't want everyone to know exactly where I am. So that's why it's sort of members only. I just want to keep it somewhat private. But yeah, if there are further developments, I will jump on. But I'm gonna try and get through the rest of my holiday without jumping on. But we'll see. Thanks everyone. Thanks Stephanie. Thanks Selena. Thanks Terry for you guys being here. It's nice. Checking in with you guys again. Thanks a lot for your comments. Thanks a lot for your support. Good to see you as well. I do see your comments on Patreon, so it's not that I'm uh, gone and I've forgotten about you. I do check in. I'm just not really responding. Angela, thanks so much. Thanks for keeping us informed, even when you're on holiday. Thanks, Margaret. Thanks for all the super chats and. I will see you guys next time, but it may be maybe after a couple of days. I will be putting up um, some photos on Instagram, so I'll put a little bit of content there, and then a little bit of more material on members only, and I'll probably do a little bit of a live members only live. When I'm comfortable and when I want to just share a special location that I'm at. So look out for that. I'm trying not to get a sunburn, but I'm sort of barely not burning. The days are just very beautiful and warm and blue, and you can see from the photos that it's beautiful weather. It's hard not to be out and about, right? Okay, that's it. Alina says the photos on Instagram have been beautiful. Good to see you, Vicky. Yeah, so Stephanie, please put the link to Instagram out there. That's free. You don't have to pay anything to follow that. Yeah, I have been putting up a couple of Instagrams. What's quite nice with the video is you definitely get the sights and sounds. Yesterday was a perfect day on the West Coast. Just the sea was so tranquil, windless, and then I woke up today and it was howling a gale, so I kind of skedaddled. Okay, so check out. Thanks a lot, Stephanie. So check out my Instagram, and that's one way you can go kind of keep track of what I'm up to. Yeah. Um, Take care, guys. Nice to see you all, and I'll see you guys next time. Ciao.